Hi, how are you? I'm Anthony from Cypher House Escape, and this year, Christmas came early. Because this week I'm posting two separate videos based on comments that I've received on some of my videos. Today's video is inspired by a comment from Lilyana, who states, "I would love you to make a video dedicated on tools of the trade, like OneLook and Nutramatic." So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about the tools that I most often use when I'm solving puzzle hunts, as well as give very brief tutorials on how I personally use them. Now, a couple of quick disclaimers. There are far more tools out there than what I'm going to talk about in today's video alone. I will be providing a source for where you can find some of those additional tools. However, there are probably tons of tools out there that even I have no idea exist. Disclaimer number 2, even for the tools that I do talk about in today's video, most of them will have some additional features and uses that I personally don't use very often for puzzle hunts. If there are any tools or features that I don't talk about in today's video, it doesn't mean that I don't think those tools are good, or even that I don't think they can be very useful for solving puzzle hunts. It just means that they're not tools that I personally have very much experience with. So without any more introduction, let me introduce you to this page called Puzzle Tools and How-Tos on the MIT Mystery Hunt website. This is the page that I'm going to leave a link to in the description below, so as I go through the tools, you can follow along and take a look at some of them as well. This page has a wide variety of tools that are useful for puzzle hunts, so I'm going to highlight the ones that I find the most useful. First up, we have the category Word Tools, and the first tool listed here is OneLook, which I've used several times in videos in the past. So this is OneLook's website, and OneLook is a dictionary lookup tool. Essentially, it can be used to find words in a dictionary based off of a pattern. So they give several examples here on their main page for how you can use the tool. If you just type in a word, it'll give you the various definitions for that word. You can use an asterisk to represent that you want to know all of the possible things that could come after or before a certain word. And then you can use question marks for specific letters. So for example, I can do this search, and it's going to look for 5-letter words that have an A in the middle of it. There are a few different sort options. You can sort alphabetically or by length, but since I gave it a specific length of 5, length isn't going to be super helpful, and I never found alphabetical sorting to be all that particularly useful, so I typically sort by commonness, because this will put the words that are more often used towards the front, and some archaic or seldom used words are going to go towards the end. If I'm curious what one of these words means, I can click on it. So for example, if I want to see definitions of class, I can click there, and it will give me several different dictionary sources that have the word class listed as an entry in their database. So for example, I tend to use Wiktionary a lot because I find that they have pretty vast definitions. I can click the link and all of a sudden I'm on Wiktionary and I can read as many of the definitions for class as I want. To give another example, if I want words that have 2 letters and then an A, but I don't know how long the answer is, I can do a search like this, where the question marks are for individual letters, and then I have my letter A, and then the star means anything could come after this. So this is useful sometimes for maybe back solving a puzzle, where maybe you don't know how long an answer is, but you know that the 3rd letter should be an A. So you can do a search like this. Now there's a lot of options for something like this. OneLook tends to be more useful when you have maybe 2 or 3 different constraining letters in the word. But maybe I wanted something that has the definition of hot. I can put the colon then after this and put the word hot in there, and we see all the different possible definitions that could be. It highlights the more probable ones. So I use OneLook a lot in puzzle hunts, specifically in puzzles where you tend to have to do a process to get a letter, and then you have to do that process more times to get more letters. OneLook can help you cut the time it takes to do that puzzle in half by only doing maybe every other process to get every other letter of the final answer, and you can put the letter pattern then into OneLook to see what it gives you. The next tool on the page is another one that I've used a few times on the channel. It's called Nutramatic. And Nutramatic is another dictionary lookup tool, kind of like OneLook, except the two of them can be used in slightly different situations depending on your needs. I tend to use OneLook when I'm looking for either the most common words or when I'm looking for a specific definition of a word. Nutramatic doesn't do any kind of searching based on definitions of answers. It does sort words based on commonness. So the formatting to Nutramatic is a little bit different than the formatting to OneLook, but it also allows for a couple of additional features that OneLook doesn't offer. The reason that the formatting is different is because a lot of the syntax for Nutramatic is based off of regular expressions. So there can be a bit of a learning curve to figuring out how to do some things in Nutramatic, but they do a pretty good job of outlining a number of important features right here on the main page. So for Nutramatic, we use the capital letter A to mean any letter. So it means the same thing that a question mark meant for OneLook. Known letters have to be entered in lowercase. So I would have to put a lowercase a in between those capital A's, and that'll do the search that I did over on OneLook, where it's going to give me 5-letter words with the A in the middle. And Nutramatic also gives you the possibility for phrases, things that have a space in there. If I wanted to restrict this to one-word answers, you can put quotation marks around it. And with those quotation marks around the search, it'll get rid of those multiple word entries and only give me single word entries. You can also do anagrams in Nutramatic by using these caret braces around your search. One of the other things that I use Nutramatic for most is letter matching, where I have a couple of different options for what one of the letters could be, but I don't know which letter goes in that specific slot. So let's say that I again have a 5-letter word with an A in the middle, but let's say that I don't know whether this first letter is a Y or a T. I can do these square brackets and put a Y and a T inside of those square brackets. And this is going to give me now 5-letter words that start with either a Y or a T in that first position. And I can also do that for any spot. So let's say all of a sudden I became aware that this last letter isn't necessarily any letter of the alphabet. Maybe it's just one of the first 5 letters of the alphabet. So I can put A, B, C, D, and E all in the square brackets there. And so now it's giving me words that start with either a Y or a T, have an A in the middle, and have one of the first 5 letters of the alphabet at the end. Nutramatic is one of those tools that I gave the disclaimer about at the beginning, where the uses and functionality of it far outreach what I typically find myself needing for puzzle hunts, but there is a usage guide and README file towards the bottom. Next up, we have the tool CAT, that's Q-A-T, and this is actually one of the tools that I became more aware of recently. I haven't been using this one for as long of a time, and so I'm not 100% familiar with all of the things that it can be used for. But it's another dictionary lookup source, which is always good to have. But the thing that I've found most useful about CAT, and the thing that got me using it in the first place, is that you can look up multiple words at the same time that might depend on one another in some way. So for CAT searches, again, lowercase letters are going to be letters that you know, whereas capital letters are going to be things that you don't. Unlike Nutramatic, though, a capital A doesn't have to be just a single letter. A capital A could be a string of letters, and then a capital B could be a different string of letters. So this search with a capital A and then a lowercase t means I'm searching for anything that has a T at the end of it. It could be any length long. If I put a semicolon in here and then tell it that I want the length or the magnitude of A to be 3, I'm now looking for 4-letter words. So there's 3 letters for the A and then a T at the end of it. But let's say I was trying to solve a puzzle which required me to find 4-letter words, some of which end with a T and some of which end with a Y, but they both have the same initial 3 letters. Well, I can design a search for those 2 words at the same time. So all I need is another semicolon here, and I need to put in the capital letter A, meaning that same 3-letter string as from the other word, but then I can say I want words that end in the Y as well as words that end in that T. And so now when I run the cat search, the page will look a little different. Now each inquiry gives me 2 possible answers. That's for my one word that ends in a T and my one word that ends in a Y. So you can probably see that cat is very useful not only for solving some of those specialty puzzles that have interesting restrictions on pairs of words like this, but also for designing puzzles that have interesting restrictions on words. There's a few other tools in the word tools category here on the website, but they're not tools that I've used very frequently in puzzle hunt solving. But I do have a couple other word tools of my own that aren't on this website that I tend to use fairly frequently in puzzle hunts, and those are my go-to anagram solvers. I have kind of a tiered list of anagram solvers, and each one will do something a little bit different depending on the specific puzzle that I'm going to use it for. At the bottom of that tier is this site called thewordfinder.com, and they have an anagram solver which is specifically geared towards Scrabble solving. However, this anagram solver does have a very useful feature to it, and that's that just like in a game of Scrabble, you might not want to use all 7 of your tiles. Maybe you have a good word that you can make with just 6 of them. So this anagram solver will tell you not only all of the words that you can make with the letters that you give it, but also all of the words that you can make with subsets of those letters. So let's put in the word computer and see what kinds of anagrams we can get. With the 8 letters of computer, you can spell, of course, computer, but there's also 7-letter words. You could spell compute or crumpet with those letters, and then there's 6 and 5 and 4-letter words going down below. You might also have to add a letter to something before you take the anagram, and this solver can accommodate that with a question mark. It basically treats that question mark like a wildcard in Scrabble, and so you see we have computers, recompute, as possible options that use that extra letter. The next tier up of Anagram Solver for me is the anagramsolver.net, and I'll leave a link to both of these down in the description as well. This one, I find, has a pretty vast dictionary. So if we put computer in here again, we get all of the same anagrams we got before. However, we also get things like Metro Cup and PEC tumor. I don't know if these are real things, but this anagram solver is suggesting them as possible options. And so you can tell that its dictionary is a little bit more vast than the previous one that we looked at. And then for the top tier of anagram solver, we have Nutramatic again. So I just want to look at what the results for computer are. If we put them in Nutramatic, we see we get things like term coup. It's interesting that we can make those 2 4-letter words out of this 8-letter word. So that's most of the word tool entries that I tend to use when solving puzzle hunts. Next up, we have crosswords and cryptics. The first 2 links in this section of this MIT page are xword.group and crossword parser. Now both of these tools serve kind of a similar purpose. If you've seen my puzzle hunt videos in the past, you know that I take a lot of information and put it from the puzzle into a spreadsheet, either in Excel or in Google Sheets. These tools are both aimed at making crossword puzzles easier to format into sheets. I featured xword.group in my recent video on creating a crossword puzzle. Basically, the software lets you put the entire grid formatted into the page here. So once you've formatted your puzzle onto the page here, there's a generate button down here at the bottom that'll create a Google Sheet for you that has the puzzle in it already. Now, the way that this works is it puts the entire grid here into the sheet, and it leaves you with a bunch of spaces to put all of the clues. You can also download on xword.group a transparent overlay to put into your grid here that has all of the numbers in it. The reason that it doesn't put the numbers in the cells themselves is because usually you want to come over here and start putting in your answers into the grid. Over to the right, we see some of the interesting features that xword.group sets up for you when it creates the file. There's the length of the answer here. There's these question marks off to the right of that, and that tells you any letters that you've currently filled in. So for one across here, if we had an A in the grid in that first position, then when we come back over here and we're looking at the clue, we see that it puts that A in here for us to let us know that we're looking for a 7-letter word that starts with an A. You might have also noticed these 2 link cells over to the right. One leads to OneLook and one leads to Nutramatic. And both of those links will do a dictionary search on those particular tools for a answer that has this letter pattern. The crossword parser does a somewhat similar thing, except it starts by taking an image of the crossword puzzle. So here we have my blackout crossword puzzle from a previous video. If I just take a snip of the grid, I can then put that into the crossword parser here, and it converts that image into something that you can copy and paste into Google Sheets. After xword.group and the crossword parser tool, there are several crossword puzzle lookup tools here. Most of these function in a similar way, where you enter in some kind of clue phrase and then you can specify a letter pattern, and then it'll tell you some possible answers that you could use, and you can scroll through and figure out which ones work best for your puzzle. Next, we get into the Cypher tools. These are tools that will help you to decode something that's been encoded in some way. The first tool on this list is QuipQuip, which is my go-to source for cryptogram solving. Essentially, all you have to do is enter the cryptogram into this bar and click solve, and then it will go through and look for different ways that that cryptogram could be solved. The next tool is actually a complete site of other tools, which is Decode. Now, Decode has a lot of tools for decrypting various ciphers. Just to give you an idea of how many cipher-related tools there are on Decode, this is the entire list, and there are just so many here that there's no way I could cover all of them. Some of the ones that you'll probably need most often are things like Braille, which is in here somewhere. Binary is here. Most of the tools have an interface kind of like this one, where you somehow enter in the thing that you're trying to decode, and then there might be some additional options down here depending on what it is that the code can also include, and then by clicking convert you'll see that you get results over on the side. Definitely worth checking out if you're ever stuck on some strange cipher that you just don't know how to decode. I'm still scrolling, there's so much stuff on here. I haven't used any of these other 3 tools that are listed under ciphers, but there are 2 other sources that I refer to pretty frequently when it comes to decoding some of the more common ciphers that show up in puzzle hunts. The first is this, it's the Puzzled Pint code sheet. If you're not familiar with it, Puzzled Pint is a monthly puzzle hunt designed for beginners to puzzle hunts. So it's a pretty concise and short puzzle hunt, and it happens every single month. So there's a huge backlog of those if you haven't checked those out. But this code sheet is also available on their website, and it has a lot of the most common ciphers for puzzle hunts. There's the NATO alphabet, there's just replacing A as 1, B as 2, and so on. There's a column for binary, trinary, hex, Morse code, Braille, semaphore, and Pigpen. So this sheet can be very helpful. It's kind of a one-stop reference for a lot of the more common codes. If you've been watching my videos closely, you might also have noticed me using this Puzzle Pal app a couple of times. This is an app that you can install on your phone, at least through the Google Play Store. I don't know if it's available for Apple products or not. There's probably a similar one. But basically this app has a number of basic kind of puzzle hunt necessities. It can do some anagrams, it can add a letter to a word, subtract a letter from a word, and do a bunch of ciphers like Braille, semaphore, Morse code. And that takes us down to the bottom of this page, which they've separated into a couple of categories for image search tools, audio search tools, and other tools. I don't know a lot about most of these tools. The ones that I use most often are Google image search. Whenever I need to reverse image search something, I look it up on Google image search. You just click this little camera here and you can upload the image, and Google will try to match it. For audio tools, the only one on this list that I've used is Shazam. Shazam is an app that you install on your phone. I think it's available for both Apple and through the Google Play Store. And basically you play a song, and then on Shazam you just tell it to start listening, and it will listen to the song and try to identify what song is being played. I also haven't used any of these other tools down here at the bottom of the page. So there you have it. There's my list of tools that I keep returning to over and over and over again when solving puzzle hunts. If one of your favorite tools wasn't covered in this video, feel free to let me know down in the comments, because I like learning about new puzzle hunt tools just as much as anybody else. So that wraps it up for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and as always, happy escaping.